Wow, thank you. My name is Melissa George, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is November 2nd of 2014, and the second best home group that I'm a part of is There's a Solution, and we meet in Cary every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 o'clock. I'm going to talk a little bit about prayer and meditation. When I first got here, obviously most of us come here because we're not in the best place and we can't stop drinking and we've tried everything else, and that was definitely my story. So when I first got here, I actually was introduced through to AA through a treatment facility, and I was very angry to be there. Although I knew this was like the last hope for me, I still thought that maybe I could make it my own with AA. So it was strongly encouraged to get a sponsor and go to meetings, and we did a lot of that. So, I started working with a sponsor and started working the steps, and to the best of my ability. I have to tell you the truth, until I worked all 12 steps and started helping other people, the steps really came to life for me once I started carrying the message. When I was first in, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, I don't know why. Here's what I'll do. I'll start off with, because I want to kind of, without 11, all of them obviously kind of roll together. So when 10, 11, and 12 kind of go together for me. So when we get to the end of, let me start over. Okay. So I'm just going to start off by reading on page 85. It's the end of step 10. So it is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. So, step 10, we've already gone through 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and we're cleaning out all of the stuff that, held us back from being a part of life, from being able to stop drinking, from stop drowning who we were because we didn't know how to live life. So now that we're in, when I got to step 10, it was kind of difficult for me because it was a lot easier to clean up for me all of the stuff that I did when I was drunk because I had an excuse. But when I'm getting into step 10 as I'm sober, having to take a look at that stuff and just barely starting a relationship with my higher power, it was hard to bring God in every single day. However, the sponsor that I had at the time, helped me to kind of put that on paper and write out each day and be able to see, where I could be better and identify my wrongs throughout the day. And that's how I kind of started out, just writing everything. And then as I got into step 11, I am now able to see that the drink problem has been lifted for me. I can't explain it. I had been drinking from the age of 15 up until I got sober at 34. Lots of consequences, lots of broken relationships, lots of just physical, emotional, all of the pain that you can think of. And so, getting to this part of the steps and seeing that, God was the answer to all of this was a really hard thing for me to accept. Even with the proof that had come with the previous steps, in early sobriety. So our literature really is amazing because it really it lists out the simplicity of the program. I mean, even to this day, I've been doing this for a while now, and whenever I need to be simplified in anything, the best thing for me to do is just go right to page 85 and 86. I mean, in step 11, prayer and meditation, it tells us exactly what to do when we retire at night, to kind of take a look at ourselves, and we're resentful, selfish, dishonest. Do we owe an apology? To be honest, I can do that, and I'm not ready to give that apology. So I'll pray about it. I'll go to God. And then the meditation part is what was always really confusing and difficult for me to do. Because I thought I was supposed to hear some, big booming voice in the background telling me exactly what to do. That has not been my experience. What I have learned is that I think that when it comes to relationships, just like with anybody in this program, I'm talking so they can get to know me, and then I'm listening so I can get to know them. And that's basically what prayer meditation looks like for me. I wish that I could say I was one of those people who jumped in and was, we were talking about this before the meeting, reading, 5 different meditations and finding perfect nature spot and, just getting super centered. And that just was not my story. Maybe I would read one thing, sit and listen for a minute, and I would just have all these thoughts running through my head. I felt like I was always doing it wrong. I wasn't listening. I wasn't meditating correctly. And the more that I talked to, my sponsor about it and people in the program about it, I found that was really normal. We are human beings at the end of the day. And the reason that the prayer and meditation works so well for us and in this program is because it gives us that opportunity to humble ourselves and to go to something, whatever it is, bigger than ourselves, and maybe sit quiet and listen for direction. Sometimes it's my voice. It's kind of weird, but it'll be words that I don't typically use. So I know that it's of something bigger than myself. I'm sweating up here, boy. Okay. I really don't do this perfectly. I continuously practice this, and what helps me to do that is helping other people. Sponsorship and being sponsored help me to stay in the middle of this program. It helps me to continuously carry the message, practice what I'm showing others to do. I think that's a big reason why we get up here and we list off, that we're sponsored and that what home group we have, because without those 2 things, and honestly, prayer and meditation, I don't think that most of us would stay centered enough to be selfless, and be free of our character defects. I'm having a hard time right now, so I'm actually going to end it there and let Max take over. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa. Let's talk about prayer and meditation for 40 minutes. Thank you guys for asking me to speak tonight. It's always an honor to get to stand in front of other alcoholics and share a little bit of my story. It's definitely humbling, because when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't think I had anything to offer anybody. I can still remember showing up to my first meeting and sitting through there and looking around the room at all the other people and the guy chairing the meeting and the people sharing and thinking, I was so different in that I was just too broken and too sick and too, I was never going to change. I didn't know how my life could go from the point I was in to something different. And it truly is a miracle what Alcoholics Anonymous has and the 12 steps, and how it has the power to kind of recreate our lives in a sense. I remember being early on and just having such simple things I would have to do, like go to a doctor's appointment or go to the grocery store, and it just seemed like an impossible task. And, basically these 12 steps for me, like untangled all that stuff in my brain, rewired it seems like. I grew up in somewhat of a normal family, and I say that like 2 parents. I played sports. I went to church. It wasn't perfect, but like my parents did the best they could, and I couldn't blame them for the way I turned out at all. And I'm grateful for the way I was raised today, looking back. But at the time, I thought, as my parents, had ruined my life and all these things about me that made me so different and unique. But I always knew there was a God. I learned that early on. I was taught to pray as a kid. I was raised Catholic, and my mom used to, taught us to say the rosary, and I knew my Our Fathers, my Hail Marys, my Glory Bees, and that was like the extent of my prayer. I would recite prayers, and I always was taught and learned that prayer was a powerful thing and that it helped us, and that was the way to communicate with God. But I didn't really have a personal relationship with it. Obviously, I started drinking very young, and all that went to the wayside. I immediately, in my case, I thought I was going to hell after the first drink I took. I was like, committed a mortal sin, So I kind of just tried to blot out any idea of God from my life, and just felt like I was running from that. And I went and had a great time for a little bit. I just drank all the drinks I could drink, and took a lot of other substances that I enjoyed very much, and I had a good time for a period. But then, of course, it catches up with you, and I started to have a lot of problems. Got kicked out of high school and got in trouble with the police plenty of times, and started getting in trouble with my parents, and started getting in trouble with people looking for me because I owed them money, and started running. I moved a bunch geographicals to try and escape my problems, thinking that if I could just leave behind everybody I knew and the world and the reputation I had and all the things that were in the town that I lived in, that it would be easy. I always had this idea, if I could, like, one day I was just going to snap out of it. I was going to stop drinking the way I did and just be like everybody else. And I think I don't know if you've ever seen that old Bill Wilson movie, and he's staring out the window, looking at everybody, people walking by, and wondering, what's so different and why can't I live like that? And I remember having moments like that, just wondering how do normal people just go to the movies or go bowling and enjoy life and sit there and have a conversation or be alone with themselves. And I didn't know how to do that. I literally had to have alcohol to feel any peace or happiness, what I thought was peace and happiness. It really wasn't. But, I just didn't know how to do it. And I obsessed about drinking constantly. I mean, every waking moment I had was around when I was going to get the next drink and how I was going to change the way I had to be somewhere else, right? And preferably inebriated. So, long story short, I ended up hitting rock bottom, and found myself in a psych ward. My life in shambles. I tried to kill myself. I was, had nothing going for me. I had no hobbies, no interests. Just completely ashamed of who I was. I regretted the way I had basically treated everybody who loved me and my family, just the heartache and heartbreak I had caused them, and just felt like the lowest person you could ever be, right? And I remember at first I was in there, I was angry. I was like calling my family and anybody I could, like, why am I in here? Get me out of here. Why'd you guys put me in here? Just blaming everybody for my problems. And as eventually the alcohol and the other substances wore off, and I was left with my own thoughts. And I remember starting to go through withdrawals, and feeling reality hit me really hard. And I remember just having that moment of clarity of just hating myself for who I was and wanting to change. And I remember getting down on I don't know if I got down on my knees, but I remember asking God for help, and I prayed. And I just asked for help. And I'd done that before over the years drinking. When I'd get in a really bad place, I asked for help. And I believe that day when I asked for help, something changed. And I believe that power is there for all of us. And fast forward a little bit, I ended up talking to a very good doctor there who recommended I go get treatment. What I really wanted was him to write me a prescription. I tried that a lot, but I just thought, like, there's something wrong with me. Why am I so different than everybody else? I just need the right prescription. Just wave that wand over me, and I'll be a different person, and life will be normal. I just wanted a fix like that. And unfortunately, for people like us, that doesn't exist. If you figure it out, and there's some new prescription that comes out that just fixes you overnight, that'd be great. But first thing I'd wonder is like, oh, when can I drink again on this? Maybe I can drink normally. But I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I struggled for a long time. The first 60 days, I didn't listen to anybody. I thought I knew everything. I'd go into the meetings. I remember one of the first meetings I went to was on the Serenity Prayers and open discussion. That's just disaster. Walking in a newcomer open discussion meeting, oh, it's game. And I just started sharing the meaning of the Serenity Prayer. I had it figured out, and that's how I treated it in the beginning. But eventually, I was just thinking about drinking constantly, and I got to that point where life sober was just as difficult, or it felt as difficult as it was when I was drinking. And I was in that place, that jumping off point they talk about in the big book, where I couldn't find happiness and peace sober, and I couldn't find it drinking. And I just completely surrendered to that point. And I remember just praying again, asking God to help me, and went to the meeting that day at the clubhouse, and a guy walked in I hadn't met before, and I asked him to sponsor me. And I don't know if I'd recommend that. Anybody just ask a random guy you never met before to sponsor you, but for me it worked. And he took me through the 12 steps. And there's something significant, I think, in We Agnostics that talks about basically that the purpose of this book is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself that will solve your problems. It doesn't say drinking problems; it says solve your problems. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous offers us, is a spiritual solution. You could go to Celebrate Recovery. They got their own thing. You could go to, what's that other thing? There's all these other intellectual-based recovery programs. They've got their solution. I don't know what they are. But here, we offer a spiritual solution. And the purpose of the 12 steps, as I understand it, is to find that power that's going to solve our problem and then show other people how to do it. And, like Melissa described, those early steps helped me remove all those things that were blocking me off from that power, so I could, I guess, feel his presence or be conscious of him. And that's, for me, what I practice today in the 11th step, is to try and, practice the consciousness or the awareness of God in my life, and try and close that gap I have where I'm thinking of myself and what's in it for me and what I want people to be doing and how I think life should be going, and close the gap with, what does God want me to be doing right now? How can I practice his will in my life? And I got a lot more work to do. I think it says in the big book, like, better men than us are using it constantly when it refers to prayer and meditation. Like, that's one of the first things it says. And, something happened to me, though, as I worked through the 12 steps, as I had a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening. One day, I don't know when it happened, somewhere between steps 5 and step 10, I one day kind of realized that I was experiencing peace and serenity. I no longer wanted to drink. I turned my will and my life over to God, and I felt like I could let go of things and just let life happen and not be worried about trying to control everything. And, that was just such a freeing thing, to just know that, like, things are going to be okay. And I believe when we say that third step prayer, if you really read what it says that, like, basically, hey, God, here's my life. Do whatever you want with it. I'm not in control anymore. I tried it. I failed. You take it. Do what you want with it. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes when I get to a really bad place. It's the easiest prayer to say. It's just like, God, I give up. I've made a terrible mess of things. Take my life and do what you want with it. And then it's a matter of trying to stay close to God and reminding myself that he's running the show. And, it talks about in the 10th step when we get into the world of the Spirit. And that's something that means a lot to me, because I've thought about that a lot over the years. Like, what does that really mean? And my belief is that, like, I can live in, like, the material world and see things the way they are, just like, make money, pay bills, get mine, whatever it takes, take care of my needs so I can do whatever next I have planned in store for my life. And when I'm operating like that, it usually ends up really badly. I'm yelling at my kids, I'm getting in a fight with my wife, I'm complaining about how unfairly my employer treats me, and my neighbors are pissing me off, and, everything in between, right? Like, I'm just complaining about politics and the government, and yeah, you know how that goes, right? It's that's a terrible place, and you can live that way. It's very easy. Turn on the news, and they're telling you about it. Go listen to your coworkers. Hey, you should say something. You got to build your brand, and you got to do this thing here. The other option is just to trust that God's in control, and I'm just supposed to show up. And Melissa said it really well, and it kind of made me start thinking of like, it simplifies things so much that my job is simple, is just to kind of pray for God's will and the power to carry that out, and then just try and practice that in my life. So when I'm living in the world of the Spirit, it simplifies things, and I'm not perfect, believe me. It's probably at 2 o'clock this afternoon, I was not living in the world of the Spirit. And nothing happened. There was no like bad event that happened. It was just time wore off. Like I just didn't pray frequently enough up to that point. But, it talks about in the 11th step that, actually the 10th step, it says every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. And I think about that a lot, like, well, what does that mean to carry the vision of God's will? Well, in the mornings, it tells me that I'm supposed to be taking some time to sit quietly and ask God to remove all these selfish, dishonest motives, self-seeking motives, and then think about the day ahead of me. So I clear my mind. This is what I do. I try and clear my mind of all the selfish thoughts and the material world thoughts, and I just try and imagine, what does my day look like? What does it look like to practice God's will during the day? I might come upon a stressful thing that's happening in the future, and I just try and, not worry about it. It says to not really spend a lot of time stressing out about it. Just pray for intuitive thought or decision. Go about my day. And as I go through my day, I try and go back to that idea of what does God want this day to look like for me, and how do I practice the will of God. And I mean, it's that simple for me. I try and pray in the morning, get on my knees first thing in the morning just to clear my head, because it does not take long for me personally. I mean, it could be like 3 seconds out of bed, I'm already like, I find something wrong. Like someone left a cup of milk out on the counter, or, my kids didn't pick up their clothes or whatever. It's just like, it's amazing how quickly my brain snaps back into selfishness and just like survival mode. So a lot of what I've learned over the years is to try and not get to that place. And it's kind of like defense, or I guess it's the only good defense, the good offense. And just to constantly be praying and trying to live, in that state of mind. I was thinking the other day, it's like, if you don't choose your habits and and plan out how to do these things, the other habits will choose them for you. Like, and it's for me, if I go into like maintenance mode where I'm just, trying to live life and not really grow or take time to do these things, like my mentality and my attitude shifts really quickly. When I was drinking, it says it so well in how it works. It talks about, being plagued and driven by all these forms of selfishness and self-deception and things like that. And I look at those as motives. Like, that was what motivated me for so long, was self and selfishness. And today I try to take the time in the morning to be motivated by some higher good, right? And I sound really deep right now. It's not that complicated, but like for me, it's just to try and take the time to just sit and reflect. And I, like a lot of people, you hear meditation and you're like, Buddhist monk, sitting in quiet, no thoughts whatsoever, just pure silence and no desires, right? Like, and I tried that. I don't know if anybody's done it, and I'm sure there's somebody who's practicing Buddhist here, but I've never been good at that. And for me, what it looks like is just, and I recommend this for every single person, is like, get I don't know if you sell one here, but 24 hours a day book, some little AA meditation book. It's Hazelton, so we probably don't have those, Blake, right? Some little book, something, a Bible, whatever, the quote of the day off the internet, just something. And I just try and sit and quietly reflect for a minute. And I'll read it sometimes, and my mind's racing, and I'm thinking about whatever resentment I got, but I take the time and I do it anyways. And it's just that practice for me of a prayer in the morning, and then just sitting and reading something is what I do. Sometimes I just sit on my front porch or my back porch or in my office, wherever I am, and just try and not do anything, which is kind of crazy these days, because I'm like on my phone constantly, whatever, clicking something, looking at something, doing something really impulsive. But I just try and sit and not take any action for a minute and just let my mind race, whatever that looks like. And that little bit of time for me seems to be enough to just reset every day. It's like turning off the car for a little bit so it doesn't overheat. Like, I just need that time to relax. What I've realized for me is, like, prayer, meditation has absolutely changed my life. So being a person who couldn't stop drinking and didn't know how to do any of that, when I started praying and meditating and practicing this in my life, things changed. I stopped thinking about drinking all the time. I stopped worrying about everything. I mean, I think I might be the most fearful person in the world. I don't know. I mean, maybe someone's got me beat here, but I was just driven by fear. And it wasn't like that like underlying fear, like I'm angry because I'm scared. It was like something's coming to get me constantly. I would pull up to work and my heart would be racing, falling out of my chest, and I'd call my sponsor. I'm just so scared. I got this job. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to lose my job. Like, something's going to happen, something bad. It just sat on me. I mean, I would wake up in the morning just terrified. And, that's just gone today. And for me, it is an amazing feeling to know. And I directly equate that to the third step and the 11th step and just turning my life over to God. He's in control now. I kind of remind myself all the time of that. And it's a real great thing sometimes when, like, life will be falling apart for whatever thing is out of my control. And it's just like you can match, what do they say in the book, calamity with serenity. Like, everything can look like it's failing, it's on fire, and I can just sit there and let it happen. And that is like the greatest feeling in the world, because I know it's going to be okay. And I guess some of that comes with experience, like really bad stuff happening. And I'd call my sponsor. He's like, this just happened. Like, everything. He's like, yeah, I'll be fine. Or like, hey, this really bad thing could happen. And he's like, well, what if it does? Well, this will happen. He goes, and then what? Well, that will happen. Okay, and then what? And it's like, you're going to be okay. And like, I just got to this point where I realized anything can happen. I'm going to get through it. I'll still be alive. I'm going to have to live with my thoughts and whatever happened, no matter what. So I just choose to believe in God and that He's going to change whatever happens for good, or I'm going to learn something from it. And, it's funny because it's not like the big things that get me anymore. Like, those are easy to deal with. It's the small stuff throughout the day. And that's why I believe, like, taking that time in the morning to just reflect and make sure that I'm thinking about how to treat other people right and go about my day and just try and be a service. And it's like a cheat code, because if you're thinking about other people and doing things for them, you can't really be thinking about yourself. And you don't have to feel good when you do it. You can be hating every second of it and feeling like, I really don't want to help this person today, or I really don't enjoy this. But it's enough, because the moment, like, my worst days, the days I have no obligations and I can do whatever I want and sit at home on my phone all day, or go do whatever activity I want and relax. And it's just like a terrible, terrible feeling, just have complete satisfaction of self. And so I think, like, I've learned that just trying to be of service and help other people and other alcoholics is the thing that helps me most. So, my life, I guess, going back to my story, I started to work the 12 steps. That first year or two, I was completely insane. I mean, I look back and, like, it was the healthiest I'd ever been. But if I compared my life now to that, like, I was a basket case. And, I was still terrified of everything. I remember just struggling to do basic things like show up to work. I tried going back to school and enrolled in community college. I was arguing with my parents and people still, and constantly just thinking to myself. But, like, the one thing I did right was I showed up to a lot of meetings that first year. My sponsor's like, hey, just go to meetings and work the steps and try and help somebody else. That's your only job. Just focus on that and everything else will fall into place. And it sounded like a crazy idea, because I felt like I was so behind. Like, how am I ever going to rebuild my life and fix all these problems and all the court dates? I don't have a driver's license and I'm completely broke. And, my only objective that I was told to do was just focus on Alcoholics Anonymous, focus on working the 12 steps, and most importantly, trying to help somebody else. So I would show up to meetings every day, and I would look for people. You come to a meeting long enough, you kind of recognize everybody's there. And then you see a new person walk in that you don't recognize. And I was told just to go up to them, shake their hand, introduce them, welcome them, get their phone number, call them, give them a ride to a meeting. And, I just started doing that because, hell, I didn't know what else to do. I felt terrible. So I just started man, I mean, I would just fill my car with people and drive around. I'd go to every H&I meeting, and I would, just try and be as active and involved in Alcoholics Anonymous as I could. And I would have days where I wouldn't get home till late at night because I was just doing Alcoholics Anonymous. And probably the happiest I ever was, and most, fulfilled my life was when I was just giving my life to Alcoholics Anonymous. And as I was doing that, everything in my life just started falling into place. And, it's funny because I was in school at the time, and I had to, so when I first went to community college, before I finished drinking, I had a little too much. I showed up to take the placement tests, and I was not staying awake too well. I was falling asleep and was very hungover and very sick. And I went to the little computer lab, and it was kind of cold and dark. And I went to the little computer terminal to take the placement test, which probably takes you about 15, 20 minutes max. I don't know. I haven't taken one of those a long time. I couldn't take it long. I was in there for about 6 hours with one break in the middle to go throw up in the hallway. And I can't imagine what that was like for those people that worked there. They're just like, did that guy just throw up in the hallway? Little tile floor in the Wake Tech Community College. But so needless to say, I was in remedial math when I started back at community college. Math 060. College courses go that low. And I finally made it to college algebra. I was like a year sober, and I just could not. I was struggling so bad. And I remember calling my sponsor, and I'm like, I'm never going to pass this. I can't do this. I'm an idiot. I'm going to fail. I fried too many brain cells. And, I felt like such a failure that I was never going to get ahead in life, and I was never going to finish anything. And I wanted to do what I always did, which is withdraw from courses about 3 months in, because I just couldn't figure it out. And I was like, I'm just gonna kill myself. I can't do this anymore. And he's like, if you're gonna do that, you might as well drink first and then kill yourself. And if you're gonna do that, why don't you just take the test and see how you do? And if you're just gonna take it, why don't you, study first and try your hardest and just give it everything you got one last time before you end your life. And I'm like, all right, you got a point there. So, I remember just getting to that point where I would, prior to getting sober, I just always, would get to that place and I would go drink because I just didn't know how to handle life. You take away alcohol and you stay sober, you got to face things for the first time. And that was a lot of what this recovery life was like for me. It was just like showing up and going through whatever was in front of me. And, at some point you just feel like you're going to die because, life's so hard when you're brand new in Alcoholics Anonymous. But that's when I was taught to go pray, call somebody else, go do something healthy for yourself and just do the next responsible thing. So, I ended up studying for that test, and I think I sat in front of a computer at home for like 10 hours trying to figure out a simple, fraction problem, and eventually figured it out. And I think I got a C in that class, and I moved on to the next one. But my life got progressively better as I kind of just kept living life and putting one foot in front of the other and facing all these things that are in front of me and asking God for help along the way. And I was told that if we're taking inventory and we review our day at the end of the day and how do we do, and we see areas we could do better, we pray about them. And then essentially what I was told is, hey, if you keep asking God for help with a problem and reviewing your life like that, you're going to improve and you're going to get better. And over time, my life started to change. And I started to realize that when I would pray about problems, things would just kind of naturally fix themselves. Or like I would calculate every single possibility of how an outcome could occur. And I would pray about it. And all of a sudden, at the 13th hour, something would just change. And like it would just be completely different. Like the dimension had kind of opened up and a new alternative appeared before me. And I realized that praying actually made a difference in my life. And so I don't do it enough. I really don't. Because there's times that I don't pray about something, I'm stressing out for days and everything's going wrong, and I say one little prayer, and the next thing I know, it's like, oh, it's better. And I don't know what changes. I really don't. It's unexplainable. It's a mystery how it works, but it does. And I don't question it anymore. It seems like today my understanding of God is different than, it's absolutely different than what it was when I came in, but it feels less defined for me. I now don't try and figure it out or why it is the way it is. I just take the action. And there's a line that really helped me when I was brand new in We Agnostics. It says that God does not make too hard of terms with those who ask, or something along those lines. And that's kind of the way I try and live my life, is just ask for help and go do. And I don't worry about the outcomes. We're not in the business of outcomes. I just try and only think about the things I have control over on my best days. It's not always. Friends in here have heard me complain about a lot of problems. They're probably thinking he's talking a lot of stuff that he doesn't practice. But on a good day, I don't worry about the outcomes. I just try and take the action. And the reality is we're stuck with whatever life we've got, and like you just got to put one foot in front of the other. So, Alcoholics Anonymous, my sobriety date's November 12th of 2007, and like I never thought my life would change when I came in these rooms. I mean, I never thought that I would be able to stop thinking about drinking. I never thought I'd be able to show up and be responsible. I have a social life. I never thought I'd meet a woman that I loved and that I could marry. All those things, happened for me, but they weren't because I was out there pursuing them and trying to make them happen. They just occurred in my life. And, if you're new here today, you probably are like, man, this is like a very religious program. But it's not. The beautiful thing about this is that it leaves it open for all of us to kind of find our own way. My definition of God is so vague at this point. I just ask for help. I call him God because I don't have a better term for it. But I found a lot of help in 11th step. It talks about like being quick to see where religious people are right. And I've found all kinds of books and found the Bible to be very helpful to me, and a lot of other books, to just read them and try and look for where other people have shared their experience of how they've gotten closer to God. And there's a lot of wisdom, and some of it's very old, and they've been talking about this stuff for years. I mean, our ancestors were pondering the same things we are, and they've written a lot of it down, and I've found that stuff to be really helpful, and just to remain open-minded and not have it all figured out, and just try and be open to other ideas and things. So I think I've said about everything I could say about the 11th step. I think if I went any longer, I'd be just making things up. So I appreciate you guys listening to me, and thank you, Steve, for asking me.